My name is Cary Feldman. I got involved with the Council for Court Excellence back in the early to mid 90s when I was a partner at Schwab Donenfeld Bray and Silbert, engaged in a litigation and white collar criminal defense practice. I was approached by my friend David Selinger, who was a council board member, who introduced me to the then executive director, Sam Harahan, who I quickly realized was a force to be reckoned with. Not long after getting involved, I was asked to take over the chairmanship of the Criminal Justice Committee. Some of the issues I recall we started to look at back then were sentencing alternatives for nonviolent offenders, medical examiner office practices and procedures. We looked at some standardized jury instructions, and we also started to look at police overtime issues. In addition to working on the Criminal Justice Committee over the years, I've also served on the Council's Executive Committee. I served on its last two strategic planning committees, and I've worked on a number of the individual projects that have been done. One that I remember well is the Grand Jury Study Committee. That was modeled after the very successful Petty Jury Study Committee that had been completed not long before. And this Grand Jury Study Committee, I thought, was a good example of a council project because it had a good dose of what the council likes to call its secret sauce. The committee was made up of a diverse group of people who had knowledge and experience and were interested in criminal justice system and particularly in the grand jury process. So we had present and former prosecutors, criminal defense attorneys, judges, court personnel, citizens who had served as grand jurors. And we divided ourselves into a number of subcommittees. I co-chaired the subcommittee that was looking at practices and procedures in grand jury presentations. And I remember one big issue that we looked at was whether or not counsel should be permitted to be inside the grand jury with a testifying witness. We looked at what was being done around the country, states where it was being allowed, what role counsel was allowed to have, and eventually we included a recommendation that counsel be permitted in the grand jury in the full final report, which had a number of recommendations in it. We knew that this was going to be controversial. We knew it was an uphill battle, but we wanted to put it out there in hopes of stimulating discussion of the issue. Well, it definitely did that. I can recall speaking at an ABA white collar crime conference on a panel regarding grand jury practices, and a Department of Justice attorney stood up out in the audience, and he was outraged. He was screaming at me from the audience that where did we get the unmitigated gall or the audacity or the chutzpah to even suggest that a witness in a grand jury who should be accompanied by his lawyer while inside and being in an enclosed room, questioned by one or more prosecutors, 23 grand jurors, all being taken down by a court reporter. Be all that as it may, I was proud of the report that we put out, which was, I think, called The Grand Jury of Tomorrow, and the work that we had done in that committee. I've similarly been proud of the work that has been done by the council over the some 30 years that I've been affiliated with it. Not just the projects that I worked on, but lots of projects. And I really feel good about the many friends I have made at the council through my association with it. And I'm particularly want to give a shout out to the three executive directors with whom I've worked, Sam Harahan, June Kress, and Misty Thomas, all of whom I consider to be valued friends.